Okay, well, here we are. Hello, everybody in Zoom and YouTube, and everybody here in the sanctuary. It's a wonderful thing that we can come together and celebrate the Spirit of the living Christ within each and every one of us. We here at Unity really believe strongly in the 12 powers that are in all of us in terms of our divine inheritance. It's really interesting. We use the 12 powers, and it's based upon Charles Fillmore's seminal work called The 12 Powers of Man. And at the time, during the turn of the last century, Charles was really quite fascinated with what they called at that time the spiritualism movement, or it was kind of the touchstones of what we call New Thought movement. And so he, because of his wife Myrtle, his first wife Myrtle, had the ability to heal herself from the disease that she was suffering from, that he became really fascinated with this whole idea of being able to heal, the healing process, and how we have that capacity within us as human beings to regenerate, as Charles would say. And so it led him to on a wide search of different wisdom traditions. And he studied a lot of the Asian wisdom traditions. And so these 12 powers was Charles's integration of his studies of Eastern wisdom traditions and mysticism, and incorporating them into the Judeo-Christian paradigm. Say, for instance, the chakras, the 12 chakras that we look at in terms of some of the Eastern traditions, the Hindu tradition and such. He incorporated these ideas into the 12 powers, which we know today. And today, it is probably, we consider that a evolution of New Thought. Unity was kind of at the forefront of that at that time, and continues to evolve in terms of the language we use. Unity is not necessarily a doctrinal or has a strong liturgical basis of operating as a Christian denomination. If anything, we have the 12 powers we work from, and we have our affirmations that we use. But what drew me to Unity was this wonderful openness. When I came to Unity, all of a sudden I said, wow, I feel at home here. I feel a place where I can continue my spiritual growth without being judged or having to jump through these specific hoops of learning the doctrine and the dogma. It was quite liberating in that regard. So as we go along our trail of spiritual journey and discovery, we learn things as we go along. I like to think I start my day by checking my mindful meter. You know what that is? It's something I have in my third eye imagination. It's kind of like a meter, like a sound meter or something like that. Like some people say, my fun meter's pegged out, but this is the mindful meter, where it's a spectrum goes from ignorance to enlightenment. So every day I check, where am I at? Where's that? And I'm leaning towards ignorance. Try to get more mindful so I can go towards more enlightenment and bring things into realization in terms of my spiritual path and spiritual growth. So I like to use that as an analogy of mindfulness, my mindful meter. There's been a lot of Sundays in August. Gosh, it was like 5 Sundays, and this is the last Sunday of August. And I guess we've been the theme, the power, the ability that we've been talking about is the ability of will. And we've had a lot of wonderful speakers talk about the theme being I am willing. I guess I get to be the last one to make some sort of insight into our theme. I am willing, or I'm not willing, or I'm being willful as opposed to willingness, being open to willingness. I've got a few things here I would like to quote. Where is it here? Start off with Charles Fillmore has a great book called The Revealing Word, and he gives a lot of definitions in terms of the metaphysics that we work with in terms of defining what the words mean and translating them from the old kind of, archaic kind of language, at least in his day when he did the Revealing Word. He brought it to a contemporary sense. But there's been other Unity people that have since then even contemporized the language even more. But he usually goes on with pretty good definitions about the different issues and topics. But on this one, I decided to do a real just short excerpt that he said from the 12 Powers, page 97, quote, "The will moves to action all other faculties of the mind." So the will is the causation. It is what we define as the power to choose, decide, command, direct, and determine. So it's a conscious effort. Now in my readings, Cora Fillmore, the second wife of Charles, in the second part of the 12 Powers of Man, she wrote an updated, more concise interpretation of the 12 Powers called Christ Enthroned in Man. And in the section of will, she talks about differentiating the difference between personal will and spiritual will. When we talk about personal will, that's ego-based. It's like, you're being willful. I want what I want, and that can carry over to other areas of our life where it can cause real negative, effects. As opposed to, talking about that mindful meter, where we go towards enlightenment, towards our spiritual will, where we are connecting with our divine source and becoming one with source. So in Unity, we use the affirmation of will. I claim will now. I use will to choose to be the best Christ I can be. It's a funny thing. We wake up every morning, and consciously or unconsciously, we're always making choices. The alarm goes off. Do I make a decision and choice to hit the snooze button and linger a little bit longer in the bed, or do I decide to get up and get on with my day, and then have to make the choice of, well, what clothes am I going to wear, and then what I'm going to have for breakfast, and what I'm going to read, or what getting ready for work, what all those things. There's a multitude of choices that our human personality of will, exercise of will makes, and a lot of it is almost is habitual and routine in a lot of ways. And we just don't think about it. We just unconsciously do these things. We're kind of sometimes sleeping in our shoes or still walking around, but but when it comes to serious stuff, then we apply maybe a little more focus in terms of determining, making judgments and decisions about what needs to be done that can affect our lives. But we're always making choices, all the time. Now, in that choice making, the authors of Power Up, Accelerating the 12 Powers of Man, written by Paul Hasselbeck and Cher Holton, they talk about these choices as they relate to the 12 powers, 12 abilities. And I would just like to mention them here. Now we choose what we believe, faith. We choose when, where, and for what we stay the course, strength. We choose what we judge, and when we apply what we know, judgment. We choose what we desire, need, require, and for whom we have the highest regard, love. We choose what we master or have dominion over, power, dominion. We choose what we visualize, imagination. We choose what we know, understanding. We choose when and what we organize, sequence, or adjust. Order. And we choose what we're passionate about. Zeal. We choose what we deny or get rid of. Elimination. And we choose what we visualize or enliven. Life. Of course, we choose to be willing or unwilling, and understanding the difference between being willful and being willing. I would mention at this time that there's sometimes metaphysical students, theological students, there's always been an ongoing kind of discussion about the difference in terms of when we're talking about will, and is it the difference between free will and God's will? I've got a little mention of that here somewhere. Did I lose it? I didn't lose it, did I? But I thought it was an interesting distinction between the two. That when we talk about will and God's will, understanding God's will, we have the misunderstanding that there's some sort of, oh, here it is, okay. Yeah, in our experience with learning about the ability of will, we have noticed a tendency on the part of some students to confuse the power ability of will with what they call God's will or God will. We hear people ask, what is God's will for my life? This question comes from a belief that God has a specific will for them, a kind of divine plan or predetermination, when God has already made all the choices for their lives. From this perspective, their power ability of will would be limited and restricted to their capacity to make choices about whether or not to follow the divine plan labeled as God's will. Now, in Unity, we believe that this whole idea stems from the religious practices in which people were raised. This kind of interpretation of God's will implies a separation, a sense of an anthropomorphic God out there micromanaging our lives and circumstances. The divine plan is for each of us to make the very best choices to express the maximum amount of goodness, godness, and Christ consciousness we can at our present level of awareness. And we do this by using our power ability of will at the highest level. So there is a distinction there. We just don't, we hear the expression in Unity, let go, let God. And that is a good affirmation, a good statement to say. But it is not a total surrender. It doesn't say we're surrendering our free will. We're just finding ourselves becoming more in alignment with the divinity that's already innately within us. As opposed to, I'm just this happy little, children of God puppet, doing whatever God commands or has me, what He has planned for me. I think I like to think of it as more of a codependent kind of relationship, that we are the feet and the hands of God taking action, and through our power and ability of will, that becomes manifest. And we do that by centering ourselves, checking our mindful meter, and through prayer and meditation, we become more in alignment with the divinity with us and be able to better express the divine outward and see that manifested in all the good that we can manifest for our lives and hopefully for others too, by emulating the divinity within us, being the best Christ we can be in all situations, in all our affairs. This is where we integration of these ideas and these powers, the abilities that we have within us. This is where we regenerate ourselves and become new in the light of the Christ light within us. Or in another wisdom tradition, we become good bodhisattvas and doing what Buddha suggests we do in order to achieve more enlightenment. I'm of the belief that, I don't think I would ever attain perfect enlightenment. I'm aware of it, I sense it, but I think it's like what they say, that it's the journey and not the destination. We get there by taking certain stepping stones along the way. Confucius says the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. And Buddha says the journey is the longest for the one who never takes that first step. So I am willing to be open to discovering and revealing more and more of the divinity within me. I was born with it, and I'll leave with it. Everything else is just illusory and temporary, as we all know. This world is on fire, as they say, or a bubble, and we're passing through. But we learn a lot of lessons along the way. Some sooner, some later. We're all unique individuals in the great ocean of God. I also appreciate Paul Hasselbeck and Cher Horton. Especially Paul has really worked hard to contemporize the language of unity that was used back in the last century. It makes it more relatable to a lot of people. And I think that's really, really quite wonderful, because if people have more access to their spiritual natures and understanding of what's going on, they're thirsting for that fulfillment within themselves of what's my purpose here? What gives me meaning? And all of that. Well, unity has that way of opening the door for a lot of people to bring them into unity with the divine, discovering the divine within them. But in the Power Up, I always like to quote the levels of consciousness. And Paul Hasselbeck kind of has a nice little framework of that. And these are the 4 levels of consciousness of will. The first level of consciousness is unconscious will, based on a cause in our subconscious mind, which consists of beliefs that are not in our moment-to-moment awareness. Choices are made from unconscious, subconscious beliefs by default rather than conscious choice. For example, if a person has a subconscious belief that he or she is unworthy, then choices will be unwittingly made that reinforce that belief. I'll never be low, just unconscious, just every day's gray, everything's a dark cloud. It's like I like the Tao of Pooh, where we have Eeyore. And then you have Piglet, who's always worried all the time and running around, what's going to happen, And then you have Tigger, who's just the emphasis of zeal and enthusiasm, he's just bouncing off the wall. And then, like most of us, we're like Pooh, It's just like, oh, bother, we're going down our path and we want our little jar of honey, we want to sit in the tree and we just want to enjoy the present, being here, present with our jar of honey. Well, unconscious will is like or just every day is just could be the same. And so that belief carries through, it makes manifest. It happens. Now, the second level of consciousness is conscious will from our senses based on something in physicality. We are gleaning through sight, sound, scent, touch, and or taste. A person might decide to turn right instead of left in heavy traffic because he knows a way home if he turns right. So it's a sense consciousness of I'm making this choice now in the present. It's a willful, practical action in terms of conscious will. The third level of conscious will comes from our human personality, our ego-based. It's based upon thoughts, feelings, attitudes, or beliefs held in human consciousness. A person believes that he or she can become a doctor. So, after gathering information and reviewing the requirements, he or she makes the choice to move ahead with that career option. So there's the human personality, that conscious thought process of decision making involved in our use of will. And then lastly, the highest level of consciousness is conscious will from our true identity, true with a capital T, and identity with a capital I, and or higher self, capitalized. And that's based upon divine ideas, laws, and principles. We make choices and decisions that reinforce and confirm our belief in our true Christ nature. And this is ultimately the place, if there is a destination in our spiritual path and growth, it's that but becoming that Christ nature within us, revealing that more of that Christ nature in us. And that's an ongoing process. That's our work. It's our work. It's like I make a distinction between change and becoming. Change, you want to do things, it's like turning on a switch or turning off a switch, and you're going to change your behavior and this da-da-da-da. It's like what we do, like New Year's resolutions and all that, And it's a willful decision making that you do, but sometimes those things kind of peter out. But in terms of going towards the spiritual principle of will, we are working towards becoming. It's an ongoing process. We are becoming more Christ-like. We are revealing more of our Buddha nature. We are revealing more of the divinity that's innate within us. And being here and now, we make those choices to either, in terms of our interiority, what's going on up here in our minds, to be constantly distracted and deluded into certain types of thinkings and way of being, rather than through meditation and prayer, find our focus and become more unified with our source. And through that, we are, of course, are becoming more one, becoming more unified with the divine. So within, and so without. So there is quite the distinction between spiritual will and personal will. And it's good to know the difference. We all catch ourselves going, I really didn't mean to say that, or, when we pull things back in retrospect and we feel maybe a little either guilty or remorseful, or that we could have actually responded in a different kind of way. And we could have been more willing to listen, be more willing to understand, that willingness to accept unconditional love and give unconditional love. These are hard tasks when we have been so habituated in our behavior that has not necessarily turned out to manifest our highest goods from time to time. So every day we have an opportunity to check our mindful meter. Is it going towards ignorance, or is it going towards enlightenment? Only you can determine that for yourself, based upon your experiences, your expectations, your dreams, your wishes, your hopes, your desires. It all encompasses and comes together. I like this analogy that I spoke to Jermaine about here a couple of days ago, that the rain, little raindrops, it's kind of like all of our little individual consciousnesses. And when it rains, it drops onto the mountain, it drops onto the rocks. And then that little drop of rain, it trickles down the crevices of the rock, and then it turns into a tiny little, stream, a little stream. And then the stream keeps going down by its own inertia and goes and turns into the river. And where does the river go? The river goes into the ocean of God, returns to source. And I like that analogy, because it takes that first little raindrop, and then ultimately through our spiritual path, our spiritual growth, the process of reuniting and becoming one with the ocean of God. I like the image of that. We are as divine children of source of God, of divine nature, that we are all little fishes swimming in the ocean of God. And I am willing as a fish in the ocean of God to let the current flow. There's no resistance. Unless I'm a salmon, I have to go upstream to spawn or something like that. There's extenuating circumstances when you're a fish, especially a salmon. You have to return to your headwaters, But nevertheless, it's a process that is that you're willing to allow the divine process flow through you rather than resist it and being willful, and either unwittingly willful or consciously willful, the choices that you make. So if anything, I would say to take away today this idea that you have this ability and power to make choices that will lead you to your highest good, will reveal more of the divine nature of who you are. And in doing so, you can let your light shine and dare to be, an example to your fellow man and woman that reflects the Christ light. There's something that shifts when there's a vibrational shift. When you know how it is. It's like being around an Eeyore. I don't know this guy, or someone that's just so overzealous. Oh wow, I can't. There's so much energy, but the person is just like down the road. There's calm. There's a certain pervasive serenity and peacefulness that pervades that individual. That is a natural attractant. Say, wow, yeah, I like that energy. I like being around that because I recognize it within my own self. Within my own self. And that's where we call resonance. It resonates with me. And so, today, let that power and ability of will resonate within you in making good choices for yourselves and sharing that with those you love and those that you hope to love. And, keep those that you love in your prayers and meditations to make this a better experience as we go through our human lives here on this planet. And so with that, I think we'll go into our meditation. Okay, I invite you. We'll start with, we're going to do some deep breathing. We'll do it 3 times. We'll breathe in for 5, hold for 5, and then release for 5. So let us start with that. Let's breathe in for 5. Hold for 5. And release 2, 3, 4, 5. Once again. Breathe in, hold, and release 2, 3, 4, 5. And one more time, breathe in, hold, and release. You come into this place where the presence of Spirit abides. And we are truly thankful for this time and place just to be with the presence. We are restored, we are refreshed when we take the time to take the time. And we use our will when our consciousness has become spiritualized. We know the difference between being willful and being willing. I am willing to courageously decide what I will have, do, and be. I am willing to boldly reach for my next goal. I am willing to stretch beyond perceived limits. I am willing to walk with confidence into my future. I am willing to risk being vulnerable in love. I am willing to listen without feeling threatened. I am willing to experience the joy of living today. I am willing to be purposeful, to know I am divine. Divine will is my spiritual name and nature. I am willing to be the light of the world wherever I am and whatever the circumstance. I am willing. Let that river flow continuously to the ocean of source, of the divine within all of us. Bring us to that realization that we all are one in unity. We have the power, the abilities to transcend all that we are attached to in this world in order to become one. Some would call it cosmic consciousness. Some would call it our soulful home. Some would call it the domain of spirit. However we perceive it, we'll know it when it resonates in the here and now between you, between me, between all of us. We willfully release all the things that no longer serve us. And we move towards a willingness to be open to the wonderful possibilities and potentialities that each of us carry in our bodies, our soul, our mind, and spirit. And so it is. So it was. So it shall be forever and ever. In the light of the divine within all of us, we give thanks for this moment, this day, this spiritual community, this state, this nation, this world. It is our hope that divine presence touches the hearts of all men and women on this planet. For this we are thankful. Thank you, Mother, Father, God. We abide in your Spirit. Amen and amen. Namaste. Thank you. Okay, we got some stuff to do here. We're going to do our prayer for protection. And everybody knows this. If you'd like to stand while we say this, that would be wonderful. I would stand, but then I'll be out of Zoom range. So I'll just be right here. Okay, together, the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.